Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk all things BYU, Big 12, and conference realignment. But today we are looking ahead to BYU's matchup this week against Oklahoma State. And here we have Calvin joining us from the CGA tour, one of our cohorts from the college huddle representing Oklahoma State. And so we're really grateful to have you on, Calvin, and give us a little insight into this week. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, Trevor. No, thanks so much for having me on here. Glad to be a part of at least talking about the hopes for Saturday. Either way.
Yeah. So well, how the turntables have turned. This is a game that I think BYU fans were looking forward to a lot this year, based on how things went last year. Was at the end of the year, BYU had struggled, but seemed to be kind of putting some things together and went in a very exciting game against Oklahoma State, and felt like they let it slip away. And Cowboys certainly, struggled in that first half, but had a very good second half, and obviously took care of business in overtime. In what was a very entertaining but disappointing game for BYU fans. And Satake is known, like in the Satake era, of having revenge games. We did it against Wisconsin, against there's several others, and I won't remember them all on the spot, but all the time. And we go in and we have those kind of revenge games, and people had this circled and thinking, okay, this has got to be our revenge game. We know the Cowboys are going to be a very good team, but this is one people had circled. And now the season's played out a little differently than we expected so far. So give me just kind of your overall thoughts on and where the Oklahoma State fan base, where their minds are at this point.
Yeah, this is our bye weeks. We're coming off of it. As we come to play, in Provo for the first time, and man, it is tough to say Oklahoma State's in a good spot at all. Really as a team, this bye week was supposedly going to be, looking into the season, was going all right. You know what? Got Utah, K State, and then got to play another conference game against West Virginia for the first three games of the season. Hopefully, we're 2-1 down that stretch. When we're thinking preseason, I know you and I talked about that over the summer on the Big 12 huddle, and I was really thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe there's a shot we're 3-0 in conference play, and for us to be 0-3 heading into the bye week, and then for the bye week to only have a ton of rumors being spread around about different coaching staff changes, quarterback change supposedly is 100% happening for sure, where we're going to have Garrett Rangel, who's started games for us before, never been put in a good spot, is what I would say. And I don't necessarily think he's getting put in a great spot here either, just to be transparent. But no one is saying, hey, you know what? Let's see how it goes Saturday. Should be a good one, and we're real hopeful for a win. I think we're all going, man. I hope we just show up and at least play decently. I mean, talking about all the Oklahoma State side of it, if I'm picturing a recipe for an Oklahoma State loss, that's a horrific loss. It is an away game. It is at night. It's in a different time zone, and it's against a team that we played really closely to last year, where we kind of somehow won at the end. So all those four things to me are like, hey, if we show up Saturday and we at least just get 21 points, I'll be happy, even if we don't win, just because it's been such a kind of the everything is fine meme, right? Just the fires burning all around us all the time here, it looks like. And our best win on the season is an Arkansas win, double overtime at home that they let slip away. So we don't really have much to stand on right now either to kind of build up some confidence within the team. It's a tough day, really.
Yeah, I can imagine. And I want to unpack some of what you just laid out for us. But first, I will say, I mean, there are no games off in the Big 12. I think Oklahoma State showed that last year. They had some confounding losses and very impressive wins. Your Jacqueline Hyde kind of until later in the season when it felt like there was a little bit more consistency. So I hope BYU, they've shown so far that they've kind of been able to maintain their level of preparedness and come in and play high energy even after big wins, emotional wins this season. They've shown that they kind of have a different mindset. So I'm hoping they can continue that after having a great win over Arizona and all the fanfare with, the big noon kickoff and everything. And then having a team come in who has been a little bit kind of down. I hope BYU doesn't take Oklahoma State for granted because certainly you have weapons. Ollie Gordon is one, and why don't we start there on the offensive end? He's one who scares me. I think BYU's had some difficulty in stopping the run, although I'd say more so with mobile quarterbacks, but running backs that have just that are of his caliber have given BYU issue, but he's obviously not having the Heisman caliber season that a lot of people were projecting. So, what's going on there with the run game?
Coming into the season, this was like, hey, Oklahoma State, usually offensive line wise, we're thinking, you know what, just if we can piece it together and kind of figure it out year over year, we'll be hopefully good. And this year, coming in with offensive linemen who are All American, preseason All Americans. I do not think they will win the All American award at the end of the season at all. But just really thought this was a stout offensive line. 23 years old is the average age. And for us, that's something to be kind of surprised by. And man, it's just one of the worst lines, at least run blocking we've ever had at Oklahoma State, or at least that I can remember. I mean, since in the Gundy era is really what I'm saying forever at Oklahoma State because it's born in '93, so I haven't been around for forever and seen some, of course, worse Oklahoma State teams. But it's perplexing for sure. Rushing wise, we average less than 100 yards rushing a game, which we're at 90. The only other team worse in the conference is Colorado, which they're at like 60 yards a game, which is still kind of perplexing with Colorado, but they put up a lot of yards through the air. So they're okay on offense. And then defensively, we allow the most amount of yards per game in the Big 12, and it's by a wide margin. I mean, there's no one else within another 30 to 50 yards of us allowing it per game. We allow 235 yards a game on the ground. So, one, we can't run the ball, and two, we can't stop it either. We played Utah at home earlier this year. I know that's kind of a good rivalry game for you guys, and I think a game you guys will probably match up really well against as for perspective. And then we play K State in the second game of the season, and both of those, I'm just scratching my head because we kind of knew coming in, like, all right, Avery Johnson probably not going to run the ball a lot. Oh, Utah doesn't have Cam Rising. They got a freshman quarterback, probably going to run the ball a lot. And still, we just could do nothing to stop it. And then we couldn't get our run game going either. Somehow we're okay at pass blocking. We've allowed the least amount of sacks in the Big 12s. So we're okay pass blocking, but it's not like it's proven to be a lot of success. So Ollie Gordon, I would love to see him have a get right game and do real well and be great. When I'm also looking at all these stats here, you guys are only allowing 120 yards a game rushing. So it's not like, oh man, you know what? Like this will be the game where you get back at it. And to be honest, the other teams we played so far, K State doesn't allow a lot of rushing yards. Neither does Utah. Neither does West Virginia. All in the top six. We've played so far, three of the top six teams in Big 12 and defensively and rushing yards allowed. And we're going to play another top six team here this weekend in Provo. But this I do not think is the game where Ollie Gordon breaks out, unfortunately for us, because I think that would be the one real hope of starting a quarterback who has not started a game this season and a guy who's just never really shown a lot of great flashes where people are clamoring for him to start until now. So this is a start by, hey, let's change up the energy kind of deal. This is not a start where it's like, well, let's get the freshman guy in there who, maybe is the real deal, who's highly rated, et cetera. This is the guy he was highly recruited coming in. He had some other Power 5 offers, but he never was able to put it together when we had other injuries, and he could have had the chance. And so we'll be very anxious to see how Saturday goes for sure.
Yeah. So, sorry, remind me the guy who'll be starting his
Yeah,
name.
Garrett Rangel. He's gonna be starting. He was a 3-star prospect who's offered by other Power 5 schools, but the other Power 5 schools that I'm naming here is Utah's one of them, Northwestern, and then Oklahoma State, and then some other schools as well too. Before he accepted Oklahoma State's offer pretty early on, he was a 3-star recruit and came out of Texas, and supposedly it's pretty good, but we haven't been able to see him really play that well at all. And last year, their Gundy had a whole, I'm going to play 3 quarterbacks in all
Yeah.
3 games at the same time. And he was one of them where was like, I don't see anything special. Now, Alan Bowman, I didn't really see anything too special for those first 3 games either. But I think that's when Gundy goes, all right, well, probably not going to start my son if I'm not seeing anything special. Probably not going to start the Gary Rangel guy who's, not seeing anything special because he's just a younger guy. And then Alan Bowman, at the time last year, he was 6th year, and now he's 7th year. Oh, let's start him. And that ended up working out real well for us once we had some kind of momentum. And maybe if it was Rangel, it would have been working out just fine last year too. It just seems like last year was maybe just a lot of luck, yeah, at the end of the day.
So change of momentum, we will see. That's nice, in some ways because he's coming into an environment that should be very loud, raucous environment. A guy who's not typically starting. He has played. He has had action. So hopefully we can rattle him. It seems like Avery Johnson got a little bit rattled. They had a hard time hearing. So from the BYU perspective, we're hoping that's a little bit the case. But the other part of that is not as much film to study on this guy, and not as so it's a little bit more of an unknown. But like you said, there may be a chance that you look to run a little bit more, in which case that might be something that the defense keys in on and kind of forces him to win with his arm. One thing, there has been a lot of similarities in over the career, and people have talked about this and highlighted it really well between Gundy uh, and Kyle Whittingham, and over the course of their career, their record, the success, the style of play, kind of the consistency, it's all there. And people thought that would continue this season, but kind of in a different way, that both programs would continue to do really well and potentially compete for the Big 12. A lot of people thought that the Utah Oklahoma State game might have been a preview of the Big 12 conference championship. Now, both teams are struggling this year. And what I'm getting at is, how do programs, a program like Oklahoma State, with so much consistency and with so much success over the years, have a drop off like it has this year, that we've seen, after having a very solid year last year?
Yeah, last year through the first 4 games of the season, and through the first game of Big 12 play, we were 2-2. This year is the same deal, going to play K State at K State, and I think at that point everyone was going, "Sky's falling. What's Gunny doing with all these kind of weird ideas of like we're gonna have 3 quarterbacks start. We now last year we beat Arizona State at their place. We beat University of Central Arkansas, but then we lost to University of Central Alabama at home by a large margin, 33-7. But Ollie Gordon got the ball 9 times. Then we lose to Iowa State, where Alan Bowman has his first full start of a game. It was a close one. We showed some flashes. It was like, all right, maybe there's a glimmer of hope here. And then we beat K State at home, and the rest is kind of we're off to the races, except for a really, really weird loss to UCF, and then we played you guys close at home for the last game of the season. This year, it seems as though all of those possible issues we had last year that were kind of hard to really exploit, or we just got really lucky. I mean, if you look in like luck metrics, Oklahoma State was by far and away the best last year in those odds. And then you're looking at this year and you're going, man, what happened? Well, I think just none of the luck's gone our way. We're third offense in the Big 12. But to come back to your question here of what's going on this season and what is the difference between this season and seasons past and the consistency, I do think this is the season where it's like, hey, you know what? I just don't think they had it. And every so often we do have kind of one of those seasons where we still get to a bowl game, we still do something here and there, but we end up just not performing up to expectations. You know, key season for me and performing up to expectations is like we were literally a whiskers away, or a hair away from winning the Big 12 championship against Baylor in 2021. That was a season where it's like, hey, we have everyone. We have guys who are going to get drafted. We ended up beating at the time number 5 ranked Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, and that was after we lost the Big 12 championship. And there's just all these other things where it's like, hey, you know what? Maybe we'll pull it off and we'll actually perform at expectations. But it seems as though Gundy is really, really good about just basically keeping all boats rowing in the same direction and making sure we at least get 6 wins or 6 to 7 wins at the worst. But when it becomes the top end of the spectrum and hey, you've got all the guys there, this should be the year. It's kind of then where we fall off a little bit and we just do not do as good as we should have. And I think that's kind of what we're going through right now. I still see another 3 to 4 wins on our schedule this year. To be honest, I don't see it this weekend against you guys, just with the quarterback change, with the other stuff that's just kind of swirling around Oklahoma State football news and everything as well too. With we want the we want the redshirt freshman to start a quarterback if Rangel doesn't look good, but maybe he's injured, but maybe he's not. So there's a bunch of other stuff going on there. And I do think it's just one of those weird seasons that we have every so often, where it's like, kind of every 5 to 7 years, just have a season where it's like we had everything all put together and we just couldn't get over the hump. Couldn't really make it worth it. Like the Utah game, we lost by 3, but we were down 22-3 at one point in the game, and we were down 13-3 at halftime. And we're the third best team, offensive yards per game in the Big 12, and we couldn't score more than 22 or really 19 against Utah. So there's just some odd things that happen here and there for us, and I think this is one of those years.
Interesting. Well, the last thing on offense I was going to say is Caleb Etienne, who is now BYU starting left tackle. So he transferred from Oklahoma State last year, and we took him, and because he's just a big boy, people were really impressed with his size and the kind of just looking at him thinking, okay, this is great addition to our O line. But he looked lost all of last year. He was just a sieve, it seemed like, on the O line, and we really struggled, especially in the run game. And now this year they've moved him over to left tackle. They've got new coaching staff in place, and he's now being talked about potentially, being drafted even this next year. And so quite a turnaround. I don't know if you remember him in his time over at Oklahoma State, but was he as bad as he was for BYU last year, or did you guys see potential with him?
We Off of sheer size, I mean, the guy is what, like 6'7"? I was trying to look it up here real quick. I mean, he
Yeah.
is just a massive individual. Um, he studied sports management at Oklahoma State, which is the same major. So I knew some people who had some of the classes with him and stuff. And to me, it's just there was so much potential there with the guy, but yeah, he was not putting it together. It was like, oh man, hey, we got this guy coming out of JUCO, should be should be incredible, but he was just not able to see the field a lot. And there were other guys who were just not as highly recruited or as high potential kind of stuff that were just starting over him and also getting just a lot more snaps. And I think maybe the scheme change that you guys have this year or something else has really helped him out because yeah, every year we had him, Oklahoma State, and granted it was 2, he just was he's not he's not great. I mean, he almost burned a red shirt in 21, but he played 3 games, and then he's second Big 10, all 12, Big 12 all academic honoree, but he wasn't he wasn't doing great. He was starting every game in 2022, so there's something to be said there. But I just man, I so much potential with a guy, and I think he had to see kind of what was coming. Hey, we've got other guys coming in 2023 and 2024 who are also just playing a lot better than him and getting a lot more reps and snaps. And maybe he just saw more value in transferring and seeing what he could do in a little bit of a different spot as well. Because yeah, he was just not playing up to his potential or expectations with Oklahoma State.
Yeah, so I put a lot on coaching, and I think also putting him in his position that I'm sure because of his size, I'm sure he's played left tackle, forever. I'm sure that's always where he's played, but he was playing out of position last year because he was so big. They wanted to play him, but they moved him around a bit, especially with injuries. Because our starting left tackle, who was a second round draft pick this year, Kingsley Suamataia, obviously he wasn't going to replace him. And so I think it's a combination of those things. But anyway, last year, I mean, it was just everyone was just completely like, we all got it. We're like, okay, we can see why he was losing playing time at Oklahoma State. And now we're certainly glad to have him been one of the higher rated players, PFF rated players on our team, and certainly on the O line. And so, and not giving up many sacks this year or anything. So, pretty glad to have him now. Anyway, let's switch to the defensive side of the ball. And could you tell me a little bit about the identity of Oklahoma State's defense?
Yeah, our identity He's usually just being really good with the pass rush, but we've got a brand new defensive coordinator as of last season, in Brian Nardo, who's trying to install his 3-3-5 defensive scheme. He does come from the D2 and from Gannon University. He brought over, another kind of edge rusher. I think we're all saying at this point, I'd see this outside linebacker, defensive end, whatever you may say at this point, too, and Obi. And that 3-3-5 scheme would work really well if we had everyone healthy, but we just not the case. Colin Oliver, a guy who has draft potential. He got injured in the Arkansas game in the first half, hasn't come back yet, and may come back at some point this season. But if so, it's going to be in November. It's not going to be this weekend. And then Nick Martin is our kind of all American preseason linebacker in the middle of the field. And he's the one who's supposedly just incredible, but he went out a couple games ago too in the Kansas State game and then didn't play against West Virginia. So hopefully we get him back this weekend and hopefully we can do good there. But we are allowing so many yards on the ground, and then we're almost allowing a ton of yards on the through the air as well too. We're just allowing a lot of big plays happening in our defense. And one would hope that the scheme would be working a ton better and that we'd be just playing a lot better too. But unfortunately, we're just falling really short of expectations on the defensive side. We've got guys who were kind of household names for Oklahoma State fans, and Corey Black is one of the corners. We've also got Kendall Daniels, who's a redshirt junior. We've got others as well too that are just kind of, uh, just around that have been with Oklahoma State for a while. So it's not like this is a really freshman team that's going to get better this whole season and be that much better by the end of it. Go through some growing pains early on. It's one of those where kind of just should be good defensively, and we're not. And one of the things we're not doing well at all is getting to the quarterback. We're just not really forcing a lot of turnovers, and that's something that we usually have kind of as the Oklahoma State mentality and kind of the Big 12 mentality for a while, right? Like, hey, you might be allowing a lot of points, but you're just going to try to keep bending and not breaking completely, and not seeing, kind of the Patrick Mahomes versus Baker Mayfield, Texas Tech OU
Mhm.
games where it's like up in the 60s, and you're going to try to see something more that's in the 30s with a couple defensive stops here and there, and we just haven't gotten really a lot of those, and we're not getting to the quarterback at all. Colin Oliver being out, he's the edge guy who would have gotten to the quarterback. That doesn't help at all. But then you got to think that that wasn't the only guy on the team that we were going into preseason going, all right, well, he's the guy. And if he gets injured, there's nothing else. So I think we could probably scheme up some stuff and do something a little bit different with the bye week coming to this game. But with that being said, I'm really cautious to say that we figured anything out on defense because so far we're slowing so many yards on the ground. It's not even funny. And it's one of those things where when we play Utah and K State, I'm like, all right, you know what? They have pretty good lines. Maybe that's part of it. Our lines aren't the best. Maybe defensively our line isn't the best. I can live with it. Then we play West Virginia and they beat us 38-14 at home when we've really had West Virginia's number for a while. And that was the one where it becomes okay, playing BYU in 2 weeks could be really tough. Really, really tough for us overall because we're just not able to really get anything going where we can create some defensive stops, especially on third down. We're allowing a ton of first downs and a ton of third down conversions there. So it's one of those things where I'm very hopeful that we can be changing up defensively a little bit here this weekend, but I haven't seen anything so far that gives me hope.
Well, BYU struggled on third down in games this season, partially because I think we have not had the strongest running game. We've had injuries at running back, and so it's been kind of running back by committee. Uh, uh, our quarterback has been our leading rusher. Uh, I think for overall in the season, last game was the first time he didn't lead in a game, but but we struggle because we've been in a lot of third and long situations. So maybe that's an opportunity for Oklahoma State, or maybe it's a chance for BYU to get that right. So I would guess I would say I know you're down on the team, but let's think positively. If things are to go right for Oklahoma State, what will we need to see for them to pull out the victory?
So Garrett Rangel, he's going to be helping us in the running game. That would be the reason why we'd have Alan Bowman not start and have this new quarterback start. So for Oklahoma State to have a really good game, I think it's going to be just a lot more quarterback mobility. Alan Bowman is just not a he's a pocket passer, but he's also kind of the pocket passer Brett Favre type of guy, but not mobile. Whereas Gary Rangel would at least hopefully be a lot more mobile, getting stuff a lot. just a lot more just easy stuff opened up. And I think for us, it's going to be just getting the ball in our playmakers' hands. We've got guys at wideouts. We've got Ollie Gordon on some swing routes. So really, for us to play well, I think it's going to be getting the ball out quick, and maybe Garrett Rangel can kind of be managing the pocket like Tom Brady or something. I'm trying to throw in kind of a player here that. Listen, the guy is not anywhere close to Tom Brady. I'm trying to throw out a common guy that everyone listening to the podcast hopefully can picture in their mind really well here. But with that being said, I'm hoping Rangel can be a little bit more mobile than Bowman. He's not a runner. He was 3 of 11, passing the ball against Utah when we subbed him in to start the second half, and before we put Bowman back in. And then, 2022 and 2023, his production just isn't great. His best season overall is 2022, where he was at 177 yards per game, and played 4 games and then got injured. So we're kind of hoping that, hey, you know what, he just is able to get Ollie Gordon a couple extra seconds there to kind of have the defense thinking about maybe that halfback read is really going to be a true read and not just straight handoff every time. And then we're able to throw it over the top a little bit too and kind of take the top off the defense, because that'd be the Oklahoma State hope. We got Brennan Presley. I think he's a 6-year senior wide receiver, almost leads Oklahoma State in catches all time in Oklahoma State history. And then the other guy that I named too is Deshaun Stribling. He's the guy who's had a lot of great plays, and he's on the Blitnikoff Award watch list this year as well too for best wide receiver in the country, even though we're 3-3. So those would be the two guys where I go get the ball in their hands and see what they can do with it. Get some swing routes going, get some wide receiver screens, and we'll see what can happen.
All right. So, looking at the rest of the schedule, you just mentioned you're 3-3. You're not feeling great about this game against BYU. Tell me, where do you think you can pick up 3 more wins on the schedule?
Well, our homecoming games against Arizona State, they look pretty good. So I'm not going to say Arizona State there against November 2nd, but I am thinking Baylor. They're the next game we have here after BYU. Baylor's not looking great at all. They've got a lot of stats that look kind of similar to us, and even though it's at Baylor and Waco, I'm not trying to give Baylor fans a hard time here. I just think we could stand a really good chance there. And then the other ones I'm going to say is Colorado at the end of the season. They look good. They played K State really tough at home. We got to play them in their place as well to end out the season. So I'm going, man, that one's not great either. But it's kind of a hope of, hey, you know what? Colorado's not able to run the ball, and they're not able to stop the run. Maybe we can get Ollie Gordon going for that game as well too, and see what we got going as well. And then the other I guess it's tough for me because really we only have 6 games left against, and BYU is one of them. Arizona State's the other one here where I'm like, I don't know. But I don't know. I just see Gundy pulling out one more win here at the end of the day, and it may not be anything special. It may not even be anything that I'm looking for as like, hey, you know what? He just really gets it done. But this is just really gonna be a tough year. So it's gonna have to be and I've forgotten here the last 2 other teams we play real quick, but it's
Texas
gonna have
Tech
to be
at Colorado.
yeah, I think well, the Colorado one I just talked about for a little bit, and then I think maybe it's gonna be Tech at the end of the day. So that's it's a tough one as well too, but hopefully we can pull it out against Tech or Tech,
TCU.
Colorado, and TCU and Baylor. I think are our 4 options to win. I don't see us necessarily winning homecoming and stopping the run with Scadaboo just playing out of his mind there at Arizona State, and us not being able to stop the run. I don't feel confident in saying, oh yeah, we'll win that one.
Yeah, it's funny because that was one that BYU fans, I think, had kind of tentatively penciled in as okay. If we want to get to 6-6, we got ASU late in the season, and now that's one of the games remaining on our schedule that I think scares us the most. It's one that we're most worried about at this point. So good for them for turning it around. Yeah. So okay. I know you're not super optimistic about the game on Friday, but you are coming off a bye week. It's a short week for BYU, a big emotional week. You should be well rested, plenty of time to scheme, working a new quarterback. Perhaps that gives the team new energy, new chemistry, something we'll see. But having said all of that, what do you expect the final score and outcome of the game to be?
I do expect Oklahoma State just to show some more promise here offensively. So I'm thinking we score more than we have in the past couple of games, but not by a lot. I think it's gonna be like a 38-21 type of game where BYU really just able to put it on us early, and then we kind of come back with a couple touchdown slates to make it look a little bit better. And we kind of get some offensive momentum at the end too to make us look a little bit better going to the Baylor game. I'm really, really, really hoping that our offensive play calling looks different than it has in the previous 3 games. Just because we've seems like we opened with the playbook for the first drive of the game and kind of have that scripted. And when that has not worked out so far that well at all, then all of a sudden we're just going, all right, well, let's just go back to what we know can work. And that's throwing the ball and trying to get in the hands of the receivers deep downfield, which is what Alan Bowman's good at. It's one of his strengths and playing to it. But now with Rangel under center and Ollie Gordon still in the backfield and still some wide receivers who are getting some, preseason type of award, type of recognition. I'm hoping we can get the ball in their hands, but kind of do it quick and easy and early because our offensive line is able to pass block a little bit, which is nice, but when they're not able to run block. I'm definitely worried against going up BYU and your guys' defensive line. So I'm thinking we can put some points on the board, but probably too little, too late.
Okay, and we're recording this earlier in the week than I normally do. I'm still coming down from the high of the win, and haven't thought too far ahead to this next week. So while I had planned on asking you that question, I hadn't come up with a score. So I'm doing this a bit on the fly. And as I was looking at your other scores throughout the season, and I've got some other things pulled up ahead of me, I was thinking pretty similar to you. A little bit different, but I was thinking like 34-17, kind of in that area. Our defense has been very solid and only allowed one team to score more than 20 points this season so far. So I'm hoping we can kind of continue that trend at home, night game, bringing the energy, but we will see. But anyway, Calvin, I really appreciate you coming on and giving some insights. I know you're a little down. Don't be too down. Things can always turn around. Hopefully not this week, but after this week, I'm sure things will turn around for you. But please let everybody know where they can find all your content.
Oh yeah, no, thanks so much for having me on, Trevor. Always appreciate talking sports with you, especially Big 12. And you can find me at the Big 12 Huddle over on YouTube. We're gonna do that weekly here on just recapping the Big 12's news, notes, scores, and the predictions, and then also at the CGA Tour on YouTube as well, or Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts as well, to get all the Oklahoma State stuff, and hopefully having you on here shortly as well too to kind of preview the game. And hey, you know what? Vegas has it right now as a 7-point spread, so maybe I should be a little bit more optimistic than I am. We'll see.
You know, you should always, obviously always believe in your team and believe for the best. But yeah, and I forgot to mention at the top of the video, absolutely do the Big 12 Huddle, which I've been on a couple times and had a lot of fun doing everything, covering the whole Big 12 and bringing on the college huddle guys, getting different perspectives from around the conference. And so obviously do go check out that show. And I'll continue to share that content as well. But also, please, if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel so you can catch all of our content like this video. It really helps us a lot. We will, on top of doing these segments of getting to know our opponents each week, we like to go on, do live instant reactions after the games, as well as overview of the upcoming week. So please subscribe, hit the bell so you can catch all of that content. And again, please make sure to go check out Calvin, especially with the Big 12 Huddle. And as we talk all things Big 12 there. And as always, go Cougs.